Good afternoon, everyone, and my sincere thanks for the kind introduction, of course, something really motivating to begin with, and of course the OCHS for giving me this opportunity to be here, to meet you all, and to have this lovely discussion about something that is very close to my heart. So we are going to look into because of the time, I'm going straight into the subject, and the aim is I'll present some of my research findings and as he said, about Kathakali for the first 45 minutes or somewhere around that, and then we will open this talk for question and answer session, and where we will have more interesting discussion about this particular art form and how devotion is embedded in it. Yeah. So I would like to begin by briefly situating my own journey in relation to this subject. My training in Kathakali began at the age of 5, when I first entered into its world of rigorous discipline, sacred gestures, and expressive storytelling. What started as training soon became a lifelong calling for me. I remember watching senior performers prepare for the stage, their faces slowly transformed with colors, their bodies marked by years of disciplined training, and the air filled with a sense of both artistry and sacredness. Something about that world drew me in deeply, and from that moment, Kathakali became not just a performance practice for me, but a way of life, shaping both my practice as a performer and my path as a researcher. Over the years, this has shaped my doctoral research as well, which has focused on the psychophysical training methods of Kathakali and their deep connections with tantric ritual practice. Kathakali, as many of you know, and I'm so glad to see that some of you have been to Kerala and have watched live Kathakali performance. You might have observed that this particular art form is an intensely disciplined and spiritually resonant theatrical form, rooted in devotion, discipline, and embodied knowledge. Traditionally, it has been a male-dominated tradition, with men performing both male and female characters. My own trajectory here in this particular art form has been somewhat unusual in that I'm among relatively few women who perform male characters, which has offered me a particular perspective on questions of embodiment, gender, and devotion within the art. So in today's talk, I would like to reflect on how Hindu religion and theatrical performance intersect within the Kathakali tradition. I'll begin by outlining some of the historical, ritual, and religious frameworks that underlie Kathakali practice, such as the sacred narratives in Hinduism that it enacts, the use of ritualistic space, and the role of ritual objects. I will then explore how devotion is not only represented through performance, but also cultivated and transformed through the performer's rigorous body and mind training. Finally, I'll reflect on how this embodied devotion speaks to broader questions of religious experience, artistic creativity, and cultural continuity. My hope is that these reflections will open a space to appreciate Kathakali not only as a classical art form, but also as a living expression of devotion, where performance and religion are intertwined through the disciplined and creative body of the performer. While in this talk, I focus on the Hindu religious aspects embedded in Kathakali, it is important to note that this art form is not exclusive to any single religion because of the changes or the evolution that it is undergoing these days. New interpretations and experiments are constantly emerging, making Kathakali an increasingly inclusive and dynamic tradition. Before we proceed, to those who are new to Kathakali, let me show a short video of Kathakali. For those unfamiliar to this art form, seeing the dance, gestures and expression in action will make it easier to appreciate what we will be discussing for the rest of the time today. I just need to come off this presentation for this. So this was a performance. Before I begin, let me just give a little context about this. This was a performance back in 2015 where, oh, is that?
I think we have a bandwidth issue. It's an old projector, it may not work.
Right, so the video may not work?
Video. No.
All right, okay.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Now that means, I'm just wondering how I can, maybe just in your phones, perhaps you can search and watch a video. How many of you haven't seen Kathakali at all? Right, okay.
We will put a link in our mail shop afterwards.
Okay, that would be great. Maybe then we can club that together, and I'm happy to take questions after this talk by emails or anything if anything new props up after seeing the video. No, now, so that I'm going back to my slide so that you can see the pictures at least. So this is how the costume and the art form looks like. Oh, why this is not coming up again now? Yes. So you can see the voluminous costume, the heavy headgear, and big skirt, which is not quite visible in this one. This is the character of Arjuna from Mahabharata. And this was the character of Krishna. So although it looks quite similar, there are a lot of symbolism that we use in costumes. This is an evil character, and this is how the headgear looks like in the evil character. But now turning back into the main point or the main subject of this topic, let me continue where I can tell a bit about the history of Kathakali to begin with. So Kathakali itself developed during the 16th and 17th centuries in the Malayalam coastal region of southwest India called Kerala. It is a distinctive South Asian performance genre renowned for its intricate combination of dance, acting and storytelling. The term Kathakali literally means story play. Katha, which means story, and Kali means play. The art form evolved from an earlier dance theatre called Krishnanatam. Historian Kunyuni Raja recounts that the Raja of Kottarakara or Kottarakara Tampuran initially requested a Krishnanatam troupe to perform but was turned down, inspiring him to create his own version called Ramanatam, with stories focused on Lord Rama. As additional narratives were incorporated from a wider range of sacred texts, including the Mahabharata, the art form was renamed as Kathakali to have that kind of an inclusiveness in terms of the stories. So these precursors that we were discussing, Krishnanatam and Ramanatam of Kathakali, were very much ritualistic in its nature. Kathakali inherited not only the mythological terms but also their ritualistic character as well. Historically, Kathakali was performed in temple courtyards during religious festivals, often continuing the night as a vigil and offering to the deities. This sacred setting framed Kathakali not merely as entertainment but as a ritual event intended to please the gods and spiritually benefit the community. One powerful example of Kathakali's devotional role is the play called Sandana Gopalam, a narrative drawn from the sacred scripture in which Lord Krishna restores the children of a distressed Brahmin. This particular play is traditionally performed as an offering by devotees seeking blessings for progeny, demonstrating how Kathakali transcends theatrical narrative and becomes a direct conduit for devotional intent. Another important example of Kathakali's ritual function can be seen during the festival of Shivaratri. On the sacred night dedicated to Lord Shiva, Hindu devotees are expected to remain awake in vigil as an act of devotion. Kathakali performances, which often last through the entire night, provide a medium through which this vigil is ritually observed. Here, the performance serves not only as a dramatic retelling of sacred stories, but also as a devotional aid, enabling the community to collectively embody the religious discipline of wakefulness in honor of the deity. Scholar Philip Surley, who was the professor of University of Exeter, who studied quite intensely about Kathakali performance tradition, situates Kathakali at the intersection of ethnography, performance theory, and religion. He argues that the narrative structure of Kathakali is deeply rooted in devotional paradigms, not merely recounting mythic tales, but offering them as lived spiritual experiences. His research, grounded in extensive fieldwork and performance documentation, reveals how performer, narrative, and audience participate in a ritualistic exchange that reinforces spiritual themes and communal identity. In this framework, Kathakali narratives are not distant epics but living devotional acts, where embodied performance bridges the realms of story, ritual, and religious feeling. We're now going to look at the text in Kathakali, which are called as Artakatha. Central to Kathakali are the Artakatha texts, literally stories of enactment, which provide the narrative framework for performance. These texts were written in a highly poetic form of Malayalam, which is the language in Kerala, often richly interwoven with Sanskrit, which is then called as Manipravalam, which is the Sanskritized Malayalam. And they supply the verses that are sung and enacted on stage. Unlike secular plays, Artakatha are almost always drawn from sacred sources, principally Mahabharata, Ramayana, and other Hindu Puranas. In this way, the stories are not merely literature but devotional compositions, created or crafted to retell episodes from divine history in a form that lends itself to ritual performance. So what is the devotional intent? Or there we can say that there is a devotional intent even behind writing these Artakathas, not just for the performance sake. There is a devotional intent or written as a ritual offering there. And that is exactly what makes the Artakatha especially significant compared to many other texts of other performance traditions. The writing was not undertaken simply to entertain, but to create offering that could be sung and embodied in the temple courtyards as acts of worship. Philip Surley, again, the scholar that we discussed earlier, he explains or he quotes that Artakatha are like living embodiments through performance, making the author's devotion tangible in the body of the actor. In this way, the Artakatha function both as sacred poetry and as a ritual instrument. When performed, they reenact divine leela or divine play and allow the community to participate in this devotional experience. Among the most celebrated Artakatha is Nalacharitam, written by the poet Unnai Warrior in the 18th century. Based on the Mahabharata episode of King Nala and Queen Damayanti, The text goes beyond retelling an epic love story. It explores profound themes of dharma, suffering, and divine grace. Unnai Warrior, a temple poet, is said to have composed the play as an act of devotion, carefully structuring the narrative so that its emotional intensity could evoke bhakti rasa, or a devotional sentiment among performers and audience alike. Another important example is Kiradam, another play authored by Iraiman Thambi, which dramatizes the story of Arjuna's encounter with Lord Shiva disguised as a hunter. While the play celebrates Shiva's supremacy, it is significant that Thambi himself was deeply devoted to the goddess. Many of his poetic compositions were addressed to Devi, or goddess, and this devotional sensibility finds its way into his Kathakali writings as well. In Kiradam, there is a powerful padam means song, in which Arjuna turns to goddess Parvati in prayer seeking liberation and divine strength. As a performer, I had the opportunity to enact Arjuna's character in this play, and I vividly remember how moving those lines were. The devotional intensity of the lyrics, infused with Thampi's own reverence for the goddess, helped me embody Arjuna's vulnerability and longing there. In that moment, the boundary between performer and character felt blurred. The devotional poetry did not simply guide the enactment, but enabled me to experience and express devotion in a deeply personal way. It was a touching moment for me personally that reminded me how the spiritual power of Kathakali lies not only in the stories it tells, but also in the lived, embodied devotion it awakens both in the performer and audience alike. I was planning to show an excerpt from that performance, exactly that particular song and that moment where Arjuna prays to goddess Parvati seeking liberation, and I'm sorry that I couldn't show that, and as I said before, I can send all these links and perhaps you can kindly circulate that so that you can put things more into, and it will become more of a visual aid. And because I'm a visual anthropologist, I use a lot of visual aids for my talks, and I rely heavily on videos as examples. Sorry, it didn't work, but yeah.
I was just thinking, you've got laptop.
I can show from here.
Just put the laptop this way and put so little bit, at least people can see.
Is that?
If that works.
Yes.
It's just a suggestion.
Something is better than nothing, isn't it? So I can try. I'll pause there. This is me. Is that what you asked?
No, the performer is singing.
No, performer won't sing because in Kathakali there is no vachika abhinaya. Vachika abhinaya means verbal acting or the dialogue delivery, or none of those verbal aspect is fully nullified in Kathakali. So it's all angika abhinaya, which means the abhinaya or the acting that involves angas, limbs. So that is the central tenet of Kathakali performance tradition. So the song is sung behind, and the Kathakali performer enacts through hand gestures and facial expressions mainly.
It's the same term as like a Nattunar.
Natwanar is mainly for Bharatanatyam.
Yes.
Yes, so yeah, here the terms are different because Bharatanatyam comes from another state called Tamil Nadu, and Kathakali comes from a state called Kerala. Because of the language different, regional differences and all that, of course the terms are different, yes.
And there were two singers, looks like.
That's right, yeah. So the one would be the main singer, and then there will be another singer who assists him as well, who sings together and sometimes sings after the main
Like
singer.
a dialogue sort of.
Yes. So yeah, this is how Kathakali looks like as well. But in this one, there is not much of a physical movement because it's more of a prayer, and that is why Arjuna is sitting down. And this scene happens after Arjuna's ego was completely, taken off by Lord Shiva, and he's there understanding that he's a mere human being. So that kind of a emotion is the context there, and that is why he's sitting down without much physical movements there. So going back, we talked about the Atakatha, and I'm just getting back to my slides. So we're now going to look into ritual in Kathakali. Yeah. Couple of other points before we get into ritual. That to embody a character in Kathakali, it is not just the physical discipline that a performer or a student need to have, but one must also cultivate a deep and expansive knowledge of Hindu narratives ranging from the epics to the Puranas, as well as countless upakathas or side stories or sub-narratives that enrich the main plot. This narrative literacy is not optional. It is essential because the power of Kathakali lies in subtle interplay between story, gesture, and devotional resonance. While Kathakali follows a highly codified structure with preset choreographies, the one that you have seen is a preset choreography, and as a performer I do not have any freedom to add in any movement or anything because I strictly have to follow the lyric and have to show each and every word that has been sung in the lyric in hands as mudras or hand gestures. However, there are moments where performers have to perform sections called ilagiyatam or atam. Yeah? In these moments, performers extend or deepen the dramatic conversation between the characters using hand gestures, expressions, and other stylized movements. Unlike rehearsed sequences, atams are unscripted and depend on the performer's ability to think within the language of the story and the symbolic vocabulary of mudras. Mudras means hand gestures in Kathakali. Because these exchanges are spontaneous, a performer often does not know in advance what question, challenge, or context another character will pose through gesture. If one lacks command over the story and its many narrative layers, it becomes impossible to respond convincingly or to sustain the dramatic and devotional flow of the performance. I remember vividly one such moment while performing as Arjuna in Kiradam. In the middle of an atam section, an Ilagi atam section, the actor playing Shiva's character, Shiva in disguise, suddenly gestured a question to me, referencing a small upakatha, which is sub-story, about Arjuna's earlier austerities. For a second, I felt the weight of that challenge. But if I fail to recognize the reference, the dramatic exchange would collapse there. But because of my training and familiarity with the sub-story, I could immediately respond with the appropriate hand gestures, continuing the dialogue in character. It was not only a test of memory and knowledge, but also a deeply devotional moment, where the stories I had studied for years and seemed to live through me in real time. That is the kind of command Kathakali demands, the body, mind, and narrative imagination all working together in the service of performance and devotion. I will return about this particular point later in this talk to discuss this in more detail. For now, however, I would now like to turn our attention to the ritualistic dimension of Kathakali performance. When we speak of Kathakali as a devotional practice, it is important to recognize how deeply embedded in performance is in ritual. In temple contexts, Kathakali plays traditionally begin only after the main rituals of the shrine have been completed. The performer who is to play the central character is not treated merely as an actor, but ritually honored with a flower garland, first offered to the presiding deity. This simple but profound act symbolically transfers divine blessing from a deity to the performer, investing the role with sacred legitimacy. The garland, once placed on the performer, transforms the individual into a vessel for the divine character he or she is about to embody. Anthropologist Victor Turner's theory of ritual and performance help illuminate this process. Turner argued that rituals of transitions, such as investitures or blessings, mark a liminal moment. Liminality means where we are not there, not here, on our way to something. That's what is liminality. So I'm going to perform someone, as a particular character, and I'm here as Janaki. All the costumes are here, but I'm not yet that character. That moment is called liminality. And Victor Turner's theory about liminality helps us understand this whole process of ritual in Kathakali. This whole ritual of garlanding marks precisely such a liminal threshold, where the performer is no longer an ordinary person, but becomes a conduit for divine presence on stage. Similarly, another scholar called Richard Schegener emphasizes that in ritual theatre, preparatory rites create a restored behavior in performers, where performers enter a state of sacred play, balancing devotion with dramatic enactment. Other scholars have also highlighted this point that gestures, costume, and ritual preliminaries in Indian performance tradition serve as extensions of temple ritual, reinforcing the idea that theatre is not separate from worship but an extension of it. Philip Sarilli, reflecting on Kathakali, notes that these preparatory rituals ensure the performer does not simply represent a character but becomes the character through embodied practice, merging devotional intent with aesthetic discipline. Thus, the act of garlanding is not a peripheral custom but a ritual anchor for a performer, reminding both performer and audience that what follows on stage is not a mere drama but a devotional offering shaped by sacred sanction. Equally significant is the moment when the kiridam, or the heavy headgear, we've seen that round big thing, So here in this picture, he got that headgear in his hand. So he's performing a ritual before he puts that onto his head or before he wears that on his head. This act is preceded by specific rites, and once the kiridam or the headgear is fitted, the performer observes silence. He's not supposed to talk, or many of the senior performers won't talk once the kiridam is on their head. From an external perspective, this may seem like a practical rule, yet within the ritual framework of Kathakali, it functions as an act of consecration. much like a priest who, after donning sacred vestments, refrains from casual speech. The performer symbolically leaves behind the ordinary human identity there and enters into a sacred state of embodiment. Again, Victor Turner's concept of liminality helps explain this silence. It signals that the performer has crossed a threshold from the profane to the sacred, a moment of ritualized behavior that protects the integrity of the performance, creating a buffer between everyday life and the extraordinary world of theatre. In Indian performance traditions, silence and stillness function as ritual markers of transition, preparing both performer and audience for enter into a sacred cosmos. Such ritualized acts heighten the performer's psychophysical awareness, ensuring that every gesture henceforth arises from a devotional and disciplined state of mind. In this sense, the silence following the donning of the kireedam or headgear is not an absence of speech but a presence of sanctity. It frames the performer as an embodiment of the divine and reminds the audience that what unfolds on stage is not simply theatre but a sacred offering enacted through spiritual discipline. Another ritual example in Kathakali is the Atta Vilakka or the oil lamp, the traditional oil lamp which is placed at the front of the stage. This lamp does more than provide illumination. It is a symbol of divine presence, representing knowledge, purity, and auspiciousness. After the lamp is lit on stage, nothing remains ordinary there. No one should enter the stage wearing shoes. Up till that space, it's an everyday space. But once the lamp has been placed there and once the oil lamp is lit there, the space has become extra daily space or a special space. So the space is also getting consecrated before the performance. And that is another important ritual in Kathakali. One another example that I can bring in as we are discussing about the ritual in Kathakali is the use of tirashila, which is the traditional curtain. At the beginning of every play or all plays, this curtain is raised in front of the stage, concealing the performer who is making the dramatic entry. From a theatrical perspective, the curtain creates suspense and builds anticipation for the audience. But for Kathakali, ritually, it does far more. It marks the threshold between human and divine. The character, while behind the curtain, is being ritually transformed. The removal of the tirashila does not simply reveal an actor, it unveils the deity, hero or demon that the performer has now become through character, through costume, makeup and consecration. Kapila Valsyayanan, one of the leading scholar in Indian performance tradition, explains that such ritual devices are symbolic thresholds that help both the performer and the audience move into a sacred state of participation. Again, Victor Turner's concept of liminality is useful here. While the curtain is raised, the performer exists in a transitional space, neither fully human nor yet divine. With the dramatic lowering of the tirashila, this liminal state is resolved, and the sacred character enters the world of performance. The tirashila also frames the stage as a ritual arena. Once it is lowered, ordinary social conventions are suspended, and the world of the mythic narrative takes over. In this way, the curtain functions much like the temple's sanctum's doorway or veil, which conceals and then reveals the deity during worship. This ritual action has strong parallels with the concept of darshan. Darshan, as you may already know, is not something which is mere seeing something. It's more than just seeing, isn't it? So again, this use of ritual the use of Tirashila can be parallel with the concept of darshan. They encounter the divine presence where the unveiling allows devotee to see the deity and equally importantly to be seen by the deity as well. A sacred exchange is happening there that embodies the essence of darshan. Seen together with a couple of simple examples that I brought in, the garlanding, the donning of kiridam, the vow of silence, and the lighting of the Aatavilakka, all of these form a sequence of ritual acts that transforms theatre into worship. In this consecrated space, Kathakali becomes not just a performance, but again as a sacred offering, where every gesture and movement is charged with devotional significance. This ritualization is not unique to Kathakali only, resonating with your thought about Bharatanatyam and many other Indian performance traditions. You might have heard about Natya Shastra, a time-honored repository of Indian performance tradition written by sage Bharata. In that particular text as well, in chapters 2 and 5, sage Bharata details the construction of theatrical space, the alignment of Brahmasthana. Brahmasthana is the sacred center of a stage, and the placement of deities, guidelines that closely parallel the design of Hindu temples. As Kapila explains, Bharata's vision was to construct a micro model of the cosmos, where the performance stage becomes a cosmological space, preparing performers and spectators alike for the birth of a new, heightened world of creativity and imagination. Vatsyayan's broader scholarship on Indian ritual and performance further deepens this point. In her book called Squares and Circles of Indian Arts, she argued that ritual was a ready source material that Bharata had in front of him while he was shaping up Indian theatre. Bringing all these together, Kathakali performances are not just dramatic events, but again, reenactments of ritual practice itself. So far, I have touched on only a few ritualistic aspects of Kathakali, but this tradition is deeply infused with religious significance and layered symbolism across many other elements of performance. If we start talking about that, there is quite a lot of symbolism embodied in Kathakali performance tradition, starting from its costume, face makeup, the colors used in face makeup, the hand gestures. As I said, I spent quite a lot of years trying to find out the parallels between hand gestures used in Kathakali and in tantric ritual practices, and I'm still researching on that, and it's a never-ending topic, quite interesting topic, and all that makes me so deeply into this particular subject of ritual and theatre, ritual and Kathakali particularly. I would now like to turn to training in Kathakali, because we've been talking about the devotional aspect, how a performer is being trained to embody this character, how a performer is trained to become that mythical character. I think that's also an important point to discuss here. Kathakali is not learned casually at all. It requires years of disciplined daily practice, beginning often in early childhood. Training encompasses rigorous physical conditioning, mastery of mudras, facial expressions, body postures, and stylized movement patterns, all of which are essential for conveying the complex emotions and heroic qualities of the characters. As a Kathakali practitioner, I have always been fascinated by one profound question: what happens to me when I take on the extraordinary character of a mythic being or god during a performance? As I said at the beginning, I'm one of the few female Kathakali performers in Kerala trained to specifically perform male characters. Given my 5-foot frame, this transformation was a considerable, or is still a considerable feat for me. Yet my guru, Sri Nelliyodu Vasudevan Nambudiri, was always confident that the traditional Kathakali training system could cultivate remarkable performative achievements. From a young age, he taught me how to use my smaller physique to execute the expansive masculine movements demanded by these mythic roles. As I progressed professionally, I began to wonder about the mental and psychophysical or psychophysical processes that enabled such transformations. The heavy ritualistic and religious dimensions of Kathakali had to be fully embodied, which posed a significant challenge. Through my PhD research on Kathakali's psychophysical training, I came to understand that a performer carries both an inner body and an outer body. The physic and the mental spiritual dimensions, which must work together seamlessly to inhabit a character fully. It is precisely this integration of inner and outer body, combining physical technique, mental focus, and devotional alignment that the Kathakali training system cultivates, enabling performers to fully embody mythic and divine characters. To understand how this mastery begins, we will first focus on the training of the outer body. I'll just only summarize the training that I underwent about the physical and the mental training. For Kathakali performers, the term that best captures this training process is chitta, often translated as discipline. The attainment of chitta is highly valued as it represents mastery over both implicit and explicit aspects of performance. Implicit elements include deep understanding of stories, characters, and subplots. We discussed this, while explicit elements encompass rigorous physical training, gestures, and facial expressions. Together, these structured procedures form the foundation of executing a Kathakali performance with precision, emotional depth, and devotional resonance. This training conspectus consists of three main sections. The structured physical training was first formulated by veteran Sri Pattikandodi Rauni Menon and his disciples. The first section encompasses body massage, oil massage, rigorous exercises, and facial and eye training, ensuring flexibility, balance, and precision alongside mastering the basic hand gestures that form the foundation of expression. The second stage then builds up rhythmic and expressive skills. As students practice dance sequences, movement patterns, and facial expressions to cultivate emotional range and dramatic presence. Finally, in the third stage, that's when a student augments themselves as a performer, where the character training happens, learning to embody roles in synchronized with percussion and relying on gesture, movement, and expression rather than speech. Together, these stages prepare the performer to integrate physical control, rhythm, and dramatic interpretation in order to fully inhabit mythical characters. Up till this stage, a student simply copies their teacher. They just have to follow the teacher. No questions about, the stylization, in terms of bringing up our own style or anything. Simply follow what is being taught and repeat until it becomes a second nature in us. These training sessions often last for 6 to 8 hours a day, demanding sustained engagement between guru and disciple. At this point, the focus is entirely on preparing the outer body. Just focus on the physicality of Kathakali, developing strength, flexibility, control, and precision in movements. These formal and rigorous methods cultivate clarity and technical mastery, laying the essential foundation that will later allow the performer to inhabit mythic and divine characters, integrating inner and outer body, which is mental focus, devotional alignment in the subsequent stages of training. Then comes the important aspect of Kathakali training, which is the inner body preparation. This is not an explicit aspect of training. But whereas the performer, or the student, once they are trained to perform characters, it's kind of an implicit change or transformation that happens within them. This inner preparation begins with exploring stories and epics associated with each character, allowing the performer to internalize the ethos, emotions and motivations of the roles they will enact. As discussed earlier, knowledge of Hindu stories and Upakathas are crucial here. The improvisational sections I have discussed before, the Ilagiyatam sections, demand performers to integrate knowledge, imagination, technical skill, emotional resonance seamlessly. Philip Sorelli notes that because the text is not sung in such sections, the dancer must draw upon inner emotional resources alongside technical mastery. Apart from the deliberate preparation of the inner self, the cultural, social and the religious environment in which a Kathakali artist is groomed also contributes to shaping this inner body. So the religion that you're coming from, the belief system that you are coming from, all this contributes a lot in terms of preparing your inner body. But however, this is not a reductionist view. Anyone can consciously seek that kind of environment while undergoing the physical training in Kathakali. All the preparatory rituals mentioned earlier in the talk, such as wearing the headgear, receiving the garland, lighting the Aatavilakku, all these play a crucial role in readying the actor's mind. These rituals foster a state of inner receptivity, heightening the actor's devotional awareness and opening a space for the emergence of the mythic being within the performer. At this stage, a new state of consciousness arises in performers, where the actor's techniques are not merely conscious and codified, but become implicit in the act of performative presence. The inner body is thus cultivated through a combination of cultural understanding, narrative knowledge, imagination, interpretive skill, and more importantly, devotional consciousness, allowing the performer to fully embody the character's physical, emotional, and spiritual essence. In conclusion, Kathakali is not merely a classical art form, it is a living expression of devotion, where performance, religion, and culture are inseparably intertwined. From its ritualistic beginnings in temple courtyards to the intricate training of performers, every aspect of Kathakali is infused with religious significance. The preparatory ritual, the structured psychophysical training, all work together to allow the performer to inhabit mythic and divine characters fully. Through this disciplined integration, Kathakali performers do not simply enact characters, but we become those characters. A spiritual act that bridges the sacred and the performative. Ultimately, Kathakali exemplifies how a classical art form can serve as a medium of religious experience, where devotion, ritual, and storytelling converge. By witnessing or performing Kathakali, we see how the body, mind, and spirit are harmonized, creating an art that is as much as a spiritual journey as it is a theatrical spectacle. I conclude there, and I have one more video to show, which probably would be able to see some of these. I'll pause there. This is on evil characters. That's such a contrast that I have seen in my life. And on stage, he's such an evil. but in his daily life I've seen him and I've been with him for many, many years, and I've never seen such a pious person than him actually. So it's that kind of a calling that comes from us once we learn all the characters. We sometimes feel that, I am actually more confident in this, or I can do this better, I can embody that particular character well. And also this calling also comes from the appreciation or the our spectators' acceptance. Some senior performers are known by certain characters that they have performed. So it depends on all these aspects that we start to choose which characters we need to go into. Yes.
So which male character you choose?
I have actually personally, I like Bhima's character, Kalyana Saugandhikam, Bhima's character, and Kiradam, Arjuna's character is also quite a good one, quite devotional as well in both. In the play Kalyana Saugandhikam, Bhima meets his half-brother Hanuman, and it's a touching play where Bhima finds out for the first time that Hanuman is his half-brother, and he see him for the first time. And that was a crucial time in his life that he needed blessings before the actual war starts, the Kurukshetra war starts. And that is when the Hanuman is in front of him ready to bless him. So that was such a moving moment. And the time that I performed that with my guru was Hanuman and I was Bhima. And a lot of blessings, a lot of blessing words were coming in that lyrics, and we really lived that on stage, where Guru was showering blessings with the lyrics and the movements, and I was there as Bhima, and that play is still close to my heart. Equally, the same one is Narasimha and Prahlada, where Narasimha comes out and Prahlada is being held too close to him with so much of love and affection. And playing the character of Prahlada and my guru being the Narasimha is another play which is so close to my heart. So one or the other way, there are plays that I really love to do again and again. Yeah, so generally male characters are close to my heart.
Thank you very much. First of all, it was brilliant, and really enjoyed the history, learning the history. So I'm trying to compare that with Bharatanatyam, the style which I have learned from. And you know how we have a lot of different segments like Alari Putil Varnam.
Yes.
So I was just trying to understand how Kathakali, how do you have a different segments? That's my one question. And the second one, the elaborate style of dressing is completely different than Bharatanatyam, although it came in 16th, 17th century. So where that idea come from, the elaborate style of dressing?
Such a good question, and that will open up a wonderful discussion, I hope. So basically, India have got quite a lot of performance traditions, which ranges from very simple or realistic form of acting to really exaggerated form of acting. To say the exact terms for that, there are two terms in Natya Shastra, Lokadharmi and Natyadharmi. Lokadharmi means realistic acting, and Natyadharmi is exaggerated acting. I don't know whether that's the right term to as an actor, I don't like to use the word exaggerated acting, but extra daily kind of acting. So within that spectrum of Lokadharmi and Natyadharmi is placed all these different dance forms or art forms and everything. Bharatanatyam comes somewhere in the middle, where there is this Natyadharmi. Definitely Bharatanatyam is another dance form, those who are new to that term. That's another dance form which is coming from neighboring state called Tamil Nadu. So Bharatanatyam, Natyadharmi extent is somewhat less than Kathakali. Kathakali's central tenet is entirely Natyadharmi. And one another difference about the acting style that I have seen in Bharatanatyam and in Kathakali is that in Bharatanatyam, majority of time, the dancer presents herself as the dancer, and then she or he narrates the story through the lens of a dancer. Whereas in Kathakali, the dancer or the actor is becoming the character. The costume is not changed in between. Once we are in the costume of Krishna, we are Krishna. We are not narrating the story there, but we are living the story there. So that's the kind of acting difference there. And makeup, costume, all that are also range in terms of Natyadharmi as well. Bharatanatyam is much more realistic compared to Kathakali. Kathakali, you see that kind of mythic nature in the costume itself. I think I have answered, have I? Or the play, you mean? So in Bharatanatyam, different segments. In Bharatanatyam, a repertoire unfolds as different sections where the performer comes in with invocatory items such as Alarippa, and then she moves on and continue with her storytelling with different stories there. So there are different pieces within a Bharatanatyam repertoire where she will be telling different stories. Whereas in Kathakali, one play will happen, and that is one section. So there is one play. If it is Duryodhanavadham or Sandana Gopalam, then that is one play. And different characters come in and embody different characters to do that play. So that there is no sections within that. Of course, there are episodes or scenes, different scenes, but it is one play. Whereas in Bharatanatyam, it is different stories. No problem, thank you.
Could I ask you, what persuaded you at the age of 5 years to devote your life to Kathakali?
Well, of course, that was not my choice at all, because at the age of 5, I don't think anyone would be able to understand what need to be chosen for life. But my family, my parents were too passionate about Kathakali. They are not trained in Kathakali, but they really love Kathakali a lot. My granddad, who have worked voluntarily for Kathakali or to uplift Kathakali. He has also started an institution in Kathakali to bring more artists into it, and all that sort of that active participation was there from my family, and my parents really wanted me to go and learn. They just initiated me into it, not even knowing whether I would be continuing learning this or not. I went in there, something, probably God's decision. It was a calling, as I said. I continued to learn that, but it was, I think, probably by the age of 15 or 16 that I started to feel like this is what I want to continue in my life. When I first came to UK to do my masters in media and public relations, that was completely different from Kathakali. I really started to miss Kathakali, and that is when I realized that no, I have to really go back to Kathakali as a performer and perhaps as a researcher as well. And then I started PhD in Kathakali, combining my media background as well. So yes, once I got attached to it, I couldn't come out of it. It's that magical.
Okay, we have a question.
Yes, yeah.
You know, you said Kathakali goes as far back as 16th century or 15th. How did it actually start? Who started it? Was there a group of people came together? Or?
Before Kathakali in Kerala, there was another art form called Kudiyattam, which probably can be dated back to 9th century. That is one of the oldest surviving theatre in the world. When we talk about world theatre, we can say that Greek theatre is the oldest one. Equally, Sanskrit theatre, which is Kudiyattam, is also one of the oldest surviving theatre in the world. Yeah, this Kudiyattam was already there when Kathakali was coming up. So when you watch Kudiyattam and Kathakali, we can see there is a lot of similarity in movement, in the basic Natyadharmi aspect, the acting style, the costume, all these similarities are there. However, there is a big difference as well, which is in Kudiyattam, verbal acting style is there, whereas in Kathakali that is zero. That's not there at all. And at some point in my talk, I mentioned about two other ritualistic performance traditions called Krishnanatam and Ramanatam, which was a temple-based performance tradition, and it is from that those performance traditions that Kathakali emerged. So yes, it was a group of people at that time who was also trained in Ramanatam and Krishnanatam who started to perform Kathakali. But what we see today as Kathakali performance, of course, have evolved a lot from how it was in terms of costume, the character. As the Artakathas, however, the text stays as traditional as possible. But apart from that, all other different evolution has happened.
Any more questions?
Hi, Janaki. Thanks very much for the lovely. Is that all right? Okay. For the talk. I wanted to ask you. I come from the ignorant North India, where we do not understand Malayalam, Tamil, or Telugu, and we've had a dance form called Kathak, and Kathak was greatly influenced by Islam and Persia, Muslims and Persia. Now, since there is a rise of Islam and Christianity in Kerala, has that in any way, because it appears to me that Kathakali is a very purest form of Hinduism, has that in any way the Islam and Christianity influenced Kathakali? And if not, is it likely to influence it in the future?
It has influenced in positive ways. Kathakali, as I said before, it is still evolving. There was a play that came up based on Bible. Kathakali play came based on Bible. Macbeth, Shakespeare's play Macbeth has come in Kathakali. Othello has come in Kathakali, and many other Shakespeare's play as well. Not just religious ones. These secular plays or Western plays are also getting into one of the main plays in a Spanish play, Don Quixote. That was also staged as using Kathakali vocabulary, acting style, costume, and all that. So Kathakali, from that religious aspect, we have seen that at the beginning, Kathakali was only performed in temple courtyards. It was only as an act of worship, whereas these days it is now being performed in secular stages as well. However, the religious aspect is still kept, but when performed in a hall like this or performed in an auditorium, definitely the religious aspect has somewhat diminished there. Whereas the performer or the student still brings in all those religious aspects in it, but the perception has changed definitely. Kathakali is heavily been used in British universities for actor training. So, me being a lecturer in East 15 Acting School, I teach Kathakali acting aspects there, physical movements for upcoming actors and people, scholars like Philip Surley or Richard Shagner have seen the strength of Kathakali acting techniques, and they are using these highly physical art form as an influence or perhaps an inspiration for upcoming artists or actors, which is great. So going back to your question, not just the religious aspects, but as the world is changing, as the world is becoming so globalized these days, Kathakali is also getting globalized in many different ways. Not just the religious aspect, but actor training, different other Western plays, all these are coming in, which is welcoming.
Okay, we have a question here. Yeah. I'm sorry, we have a question here. I'll come to you in a second. No, go ahead.
My question was a bit early. You obviously been a scholar at the Oxford Centre for Hindu Studies, and I just wanted to know how, from a background of Kathakali, obviously you were studying as a student, but when did you find out about the OCHS and how has it helped you in your research?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that question. Going back to my PhD days, I was trying to get, because the topic that I really wanted to research was on tantric ritual practice and Kathakali. I got a wonderful supervisor at that time, Professor Chris Dorset from University of Northumbria. He agreed to supervise on the Kathakali aspect and the aspects behind that, if just to be broad about the topic. But I really wanted some support about the tantric ritual practice, and I wanted to meet scholars and research more about the tantric aspect of these hand gestures. And that is when I met Dr. Bjorn Wernicke-Olaisen from Oxford Center for Hindu Studies, and he has been a great support for me as an external supervisor of my PhD. And that is how I started my link with OCHS. And now I have a project with the OCHS, which is about Shakta traditions program, about hand gestures in Shakteya rituals, which is goddess rituals. So the particular project that I am doing with the OCHS does not have anything to do directly with Kathakali. However, it is about hand gestural practice in tantric rituals. I can unlock that, or I'm in a better position to understand those hand gestures because I'm trained in Kathakali. So that's the connection that I'm bringing into the OCHS, and the OCHS is helping me in terms of my research as well.
It's just
Yes.
one little thing, going beyond dance forms in Hindu culture, what do you think of Kavi Kalidas, who wrote lots of poetry and dance forms and dramas? What do you think of that? That's older than your all these 16th century. 19th
Exactly,
century.
yes. Kalidasa's Shakuntalam, all those plays are well dated back
That's right.
than Kathakali. Kalidasa, of course, is his contributions cannot be measured.
That's right.
His contributions are that high to Indian theatre tradition, especially because his plays are performed in different other traditions. In Bharatanatyam, it's been taken. In many other dance forms, it has been taken. In Kathakali particularly, because the Atakathas are written in Malayalam language, of course it has been written by Malayalis or from people from Kerala. However, Kalidasa's scriptures have heavily influenced, I must say that they have heavily influenced this art form as well. His contribution is wider, beyond Kathakali, wider, definitely.
Any more? Any more questions? Oh, here.
Since the traditional language used is Malayalam, for lay person to understand the play, what is going on, is there any way of translating, or are there any translations or subtitles if you're watching any video?
Yes, efforts are happening towards that direction. What we usually do these days are, if it is a video, then we are giving subtitles as much as possible. At the beginning of the play, we give as much of introduction as possible to contextualize what is happening. But with Kathakali, where I struggle as a Kathakali performer, to be very honest, when I go to people who are new to Kathakali, is that to what extent people would understand this dance form. Even if I give introduction about what is happening on the stage, and even if you come from the same religious background, knowing the story as well, it is, I must admit that it is an intricate art form where the costume, everything is so symbolically heavy. And the costume, the color, everything can be seen as like aliens, it's very difficult to understand. So from my end, my perception or my opinion to that is, we must, as Kathakali performers, we must educate spectators before we perform. And these kind of talks are kind of humble efforts towards that direction, that Kathakali is such a traditional art form, heavily religious in its nature. To make it reach people around the world, it need to be simplified somehow, but not compromising on the traditionality of that performance tradition, but educating the spectators to understand, to make them understand what this color means, what this costume means, what would be these frequently used couple of gestures would mean. Something around, so the efforts are happening definitely. That gap has been identified.
Thank you. So I have a question for you,
Yes.
Dr. Nair. There seems to be a very strong gender bias towards masculine roles. Are there any feminine roles in Kathakali?
There are, definitely.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, indeed. There are definitely female roles which was traditionally performed by male performers. Even now, male performers are definitely in forefront performing female characters, and that has definitely been welcomed in Kerala, and that has been the practice as well. It was very recently that female performers started to come in, or female performers started to get celebrated within the Kathakali performance tradition. There are female performers who are trained or specializing on female characters. For example, Putana Moksham, another, that particular play is female central, which means only female role is there in that particular play. You might have heard about Putana. So Putana Moksham is Putana's salvation. So that particular play is being performed only by the character Putana. So those who are specializing on female characters, it is a challenge for them to perform that particular character, because it's like a one performer only performing the entire play. So there are challenging performance or challenging characters for female roles as well as male roles as well. Not the character, but it is the gender bias is on the performers actually. Who is performing what? But there wasn't many female performers in Kathakali tradition before. The bias was on the performers, not on the female roles. I'm not sure whether I'm clear enough.
Yes. So I have a follow-up question on that. From what I understand, when there are female roles portrayed in Kathakali, there are just two extremities, either the virtuous or the demoness. What happens in between?
All those ambivalent ones. I'm thinking of an example here. For female roles especially that you're asking,
yes.
Yeah? So we have these ambivalent characters such as, well, you're right, pious ones are there, she's pious. Demoness ones are there. Draupadi is there, who I, as a performer, when I studied that character, I felt like Draupadi is a very stern woman. She is not, I can't call her a pious woman, but instead she exactly knew how to make each movement to be able to get things going. So, yeah, this is me as a performer who have performed Draupadi. So there are ambivalent characters like that. Another example I can bring in is Lalita character, who is Lalita is a generic name that is used in Kathakali. Lalita characters are for those characters who are actual demons but disguised as nice women. Yeah, so they are actually in between. Especially when I embody those characters, it's very difficult because inside I have to keep that evilness, but outside I have to perform as such a beautiful woman, as such an attractive woman, and so it's that ambivalence that we have to keep. Physical, that the whole discussion about outer body and inner body comes in such an interesting play here.
Okay, thank you. Finally, one more question from me, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
So we have other art forms in Kerala, Mohini Natyam, Thayam, etc. Is there any overlap or any transcendence into those art forms at all from Kathakali artists?
Indeed, there are quite a lot of overlaps. There are different other art forms called Mohiniyattam, Kudiyattam, the one that I've mentioned before. So to explain that clearly, I have to go back to Natya Shastra, the text. So Natya Shastra is a pan-Indian performance studies text, I would say. So from Natya Shastra, all of these different performance traditions has taken or got influenced by different theories there, the instructions in Natya Shastra and all that. Apart from Natya Shastra, there are regional texts. In Kerala, there is one important text called Hasta Lakshana Deepika, whereas for Bharatanatyam it is Abhinaya Darpanam. Yeah? So there are regional texts which actually directly influence these art forms that are coming from. So coming back to your question, this Hasta Lakshana Deepika forms as a basic text of hand gestures for all the art forms that comes from Kerala. Kudiyattam, Kathakali, Mohiniyattam, all these art forms take hand gestural practice from Hastalakshana Deepika, which means they are all quite similar. And at the same time, they go back to Natya Shastra as well, where they take instructions or directions from Natya Shastra as well, which makes it a bit different sometimes. Now, there are many aspects which makes it similar and different at the same time, because we talked about Natya Dharmi and Loka Dharmi. So within the spectrum of Loka Dharmi and Natya Dharmi, these traditions differs. In Mohiniyattam, another example that he mentioned, it's an art form which is more graceful, which is not as virtuous as Kathakali. So in terms of the physical movement, there are differences. In terms of the Natya Dharmi technique that we use, there are differences. At the same time, there are overlaps as well because of the text and the regional differences that we follow. The text, the upakathas or the sub-stories that we follow, the social and the cultural environment that we all share. Because of all these, definitely there are overlaps.
One final question.
Sure.
Hopefully. A simple one, but I think the answer will be dynamic. I've been asked to say, generally you've obviously devoted your life to understanding, learning, everything else. But in itself, actually performing on the day, the preparation and the painting, how long does that take?
Good question. It's, you know that white beard, it's called chutti in Kathakali. That in itself will take 1 hour. And that is actually an opportunity for the performer to lie down and sleep. Jokes apart, but that's the first thing that we get done, the chutti. But the difficult thing about that is that after that we cannot talk much, because if you open your mouth too much, then this will fall off. So you have to sustain that for another 3 or 4 hours of dressing up, and then 4 hours of performing on stage as well. Jumping, all these kind of virtuous movements will also be there. The costume itself is quite heavy. The headgear can weigh, it depends on each character, can weigh anywhere between 4 to 5 kilograms. So that is on head. The big skirt is on our hip, which can also be quite heavy. So gender bias, the question going back to that point, this could probably be one reason why female or women were not performing before, because our bodies change a lot through the years of our life. I am mother to 2, and both of my babies came through C-section. So my body changed a lot, and it was such a challenging aspect for me to go back to performance, to do a 4-hour, 5-hour long performance after this delivery. It was not easy. So yeah, I mean, the preparation itself takes too long, but we enjoy that because it's a slow transformation that happens in us. I remember once when my guru was dressing up along with me. That was one of my first beginning time in Kathakali, and I never knew these kind of ritualistic aspects at that time. So I was dressing up along with him. I was painting my face, and he was there sitting beside me and painting, and he got everything ready. So at that day, he was performing the character of Kuchela as an old man who was very poor and very tired. So he finished his dressing up, and he got up and he was limping forward. And I got really worried. I was like, oh, are you okay? Are you okay? Because he's not performing there. He's in backstage. He's not yet on the main stage. And other performers who are not yet dressed up stopped me from asking that. Because of my love for my guru, I got worried seeing him limping forward and looking so tired. And other performers said, no, don't ask. That's him. He's becoming the character now. Give him space. So I've seen many other senior performers who, after wearing the headgear, stays like that with such a mythic vibration around them. And if we go beside them and ask, do you want water or something, sometimes they scream. Sometimes they scream us out of their way. They don't let themselves off from that character. So it is that transformation that happens over this 4 or 5 hours of dressing up. Slowly but steadily, we are becoming that character. We cannot eat Yes, drink is fine, but we cannot eat for such a long time. And often when this has been performed as offering in temples, it will go for the entire night. Starting from 12 at midnight, we finish performances at 4 in the morning. And another reason why women were not performing as much, because this, protection, all that kind of aspects were there. So yes, it's a wonderful process of being the character and dressing up. Yes, I'm sorry, I was going on and on about it.
One final question. Anyone? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, Mohiniyattam performer. Yes, she's a Mohiniyattam performer. Very much, Mohiniyattam is, I cannot say similar, but very much Kathakali female roles movements and Mohiniyattam can be seen as quite similar. Again, because of two different main aspects in Kathakali, Tandava and Lasya. When we talk about Tandava, we think it is Shiva Tandava. It's actually a technique. Yeah, it's actually a acting technique. It's a masculine form, but that also doesn't mean that Tandava should only be performed by male characters. This is one of the criticism that I receive when I perform male characters. Some people have said that Kathakali is exclusively for Tandava, so female, stay away from it. But that is ignorance. Yes, Tandava is a technique. It's not for male performers. Tandava is a technique. Lasya is another technique. I can, or anyone who is trained in Indian performance tradition can perform Tandava as well as perform Lasya as well. Lasya is the graceful movements and Tandava is the masculine virtuous movement. So these are just two different acting techniques, not exclusively for any particular gender or anyone. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you so much for listening to me so far. Thank you.